All right. Hello, everyone. Just tuning in. Welcome, welcome. Glad to have you guys all here. I will say welcome a few times because everyone's just connecting to audio. So some people get to hear this first. If you have ever been on a webinar where yours truly is a part of it, you already know what I'm going to ask you. I definitely recognize a lot of these names. Please let us know where you are tuning in from. And what do you currently do? Are you in the health space already? Do you have something completely separate that you do? That's totally fine as well. We have teachers, accountants. I've interviewed a physicist, I think, engineers that all come into this functional healthcare world. And then we have people that are already health coaches or personal trainers or whatever. So let's see where you're from and what you got going on. Anna said, good morning, Evan. Good morning, Anna. I recognize you from last time. That was one of the names. And you're right at the top of my list, right? Because it's alphabetical. We got Sarah saying, morning all. She is an RN from the Canadian Rockies. Very cool. Jackie, doctor of natural health in New Mexico. Maddie, that's my wife's name. I'm a women's hypermobility coach in Denver, Colorado. Very cool. Susan, hi, tuning in from Arizona, digestive health coach. All right, a lot of health professionals on so far. Very cool. Again, no worries if not. Stephanie is in North Carolina, registered nurse. We have an ND from UK. Welcome. Thanks for tuning in with us. Not that late there, so that's good. We got Manny in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. Nutrition coach since 2013 from Wyoming. Very cool, Terry. Oh my gosh, so many people saying, sorry if I don't get to all your names here. Very cool to see where everyone's from. Help me with this. Tell me who is the farthest away from us right now. Do we have any New Zealanders on? Because usually there's at least one from New Zealand that sets the record. So we have a few more from UK, physician assistant in Tennessee. Cool, but not close or not far. Originally from New Zealand. All right, there's Emma. There's someone with the New Zealand. I was just looking up the North and South Islands the other day. I'm like, wow, this is a stunningly beautiful country. Why did I not grow up there? That would have been awesome. All right, so what we are going to be doing today, we're doing a supplement roundtable of sorts. So you guys will have an opportunity to ask questions at the end. You also have an opportunity, of course, to engage with us as we go along here. We will have some presentation style stuff happening first as well. Actually, Brenda, if I'm not mistaken, I think you can kind of break that down a little bit more for us, and then I can bio our guest today if you'd like.
Yeah, that sounds great. So hi, everybody. My name is Brenda. I actually found FDN when I was going through my own burnout issues and weight issues and decided to do the program, and I'm an FDN practitioner now. But you'll probably recognize my name from the chat because I'm usually in here helping out the FDN team. So with that, I just wanted to give you two housekeeping basics. So number one, if you have any questions, feel free to drop them in the chat. We will have time for Q&A, so drop them in there. Number two, if you can't stay the whole session today, there will be a replay, and I will post that link shortly. But all of these Discovery Series events, the replays are going onto the FDN YouTube channel, all under one playlist. So we will make sure you all get that if you can't stick around. And with that, I'll pass it back to Evan, and then we'll get into presentations and Q&A.
Thank you, Brenda. So we'll do a bit of informal bios because these people are so credentialed. We could speak about them for hours if we wanted to. So I'll give you the footnotes of how awesome they are. And I will also make sure to post the YouTube link multiple times for you guys. I hate to be that guy on YouTube that's like, subscribe and like the video, but seriously, subscribe and like the video. Not only do we give you the replays for these events, we released 3 podcasts a week on average with experts in the health space. We do lab reviews live. So we actually get super nerdy and review labs, and then you can ask us questions there. It's really cool. So we'll make sure to get the link for you guys. And of course, Brenda's always a step ahead. She always is. So the first person I will introduce is someone who recently just got a very well-deserved upgrade in title. I'm still pretty sure that she's doing very similar work to what she was doing before because she's awesome. But I want to introduce you to our education director, Elizabeth Gaines. So if I can, you always say this publicly, so I hope it's okay for me to share because I just think you're an amazing person. Elizabeth not only helps out with so much of the FDN course curriculum nowadays, the whole reason this person got into FDN is because she was dealing with burnout that came from years of working with minors who were victims of domestic sex trafficking. I think I said that completely wrong. So do you want to correct that, Elizabeth, before I say that incorrectly?
You did pretty well, actually, Ev. It's I was working with victims of domestic minor sex trafficking. So yes, American girls under the age of 18. Yeah,
that is not the thing to get incorrect. So thank you. And because of the high stress of that job, I mean, we've talked privately at conferences. She's answering calls at 3 a.m. Because that's when some of these people could escape some of the stuff that they were in or needed additional help. And of course, that's like an amazing saint level job, but it does burn you out eventually. So that's actually how she got into the world of FDN. So you got to hear her talk, and she'll be presenting with us today. And you guys have probably seen her on other webinars. We also have Reed Davis. This is very cool because so many times we are on webinars now and you guys don't always get to see Reed. So Reed is the reason that we are all here. He is the founder of Functional Diagnostic Nutrition. And one thing I always like to tell people that's included in his bio really is this wasn't something where we just pulled this out of our hats because, you know, we saw functional medicine was a cool thing that was up and coming. Reed was actually in the trenches developing this system that we call FDN prior to this being anywhere near mainstream. And he ran over 11,000 labs, 11,000 with clients before teaching this as a system to other people. And now the course has been around for, Reed, correct me if I'm wrong, I think it's been taught as a course in at least some capacity, whether it was a weekend crash course or now 10 months of learning that people can do. It's been around for about 14, 15 years as a program, correct?
Since 2008 is when I taught my first
That's
weekend
awesome.
workshop. Now it's a full, basically I teach you everything that I learned in 10 years in 10 months or less.
Awesome. So you guys got the man himself here today helping us out. And then Dustin McFarland, I think not only Dustin, are you a clinical advisor? Correct me if I'm wrong. You're a course mentor here at FDN as well. So you do both.
That's correct. Yep, absolutely. I enjoy
So
them both
Dustin
a
makes
lot,
me
too.
jealous because he's the only dude here at FDN with a better voice than myself. It's even deeper. So, you know, you can't win everything. But Dustin is a course mentor and clinical advisor. So what that means is the course mentors are the people that help our trainees directly as they're going through the program. So we're a little different than other places. We do believe that you should have some additional direct support. We never just want to leave you with an online course and say, hey, good luck. While a lot of it is self-paced, you always have access to us while you're going through. And we don't just let you go out into the world and say, let's hope for the best. We put you through with these mentors to make sure you are tested properly. And you can't graduate from FDN unless you know what you're doing. So that's what the course mentors are for. And then the clinical advisors, which is also a hat that he wears here at FDN, they are the individuals that people like me who are graduates of FDN go to when they need help with cases, or maybe we're exploring some additional labs that maybe we didn't learn in FDN, but we learned about in our community afterwards, and we need a second set of eyes on it. So I have been an FDN graduate for 7.5 years now. I still use clinical advisors all of the time because if I'm having someone that's working with me and they're trusting me with their health, I want to make sure that they get the best team possible. So if there's only one thing that I missed that a clinical advisor finds from my client, I consider that worth it. So sometimes my sessions are super short with them because I have been doing it for a while. And then other times it's like stuff I never even thought about because this is the world they live in 24/7. And I probably shouldn't tell this story, Dustin, but the funniest one between us was when I opted to do the phone call version of a clinical advisor consult. I admittedly forgot that I booked it, and he is calling me over and over again. I'm like, who the heck's from Colorado? And I'm putting him to voicemail. And after about 5 minutes, I got wise and realized this gentleman was trying to help me out with my case. So, Dustin, we're so glad to have you here. I don't get to talk to you a lot on webinars either. So this is going to be a fun day.
Yes, I agree. I'm happy to be here.
Cool. Danielle says she loves the podcast. Thanks, Danielle. All right, so we will get into more of a presentation mode. Please ask your questions as we're going along here, because today, even more than the presentation, is more so about you getting a chance to ask questions. We will always prioritize relevant questions. So what I mean by that is if we're talking about XYZ topic in the presentation and you have a question about XYZ thing, we're going to prioritize that. But as we go along here, as is true with all of our events this month, you can ask any question about the course. Just give me a second. If someone has a pressing question, we're going to focus on that first. So Elizabeth, I believe it is you that will be taking this away here now.
Thank you so much, Evan. I appreciate it. It's so great to be here with all of you guys for yet another event in our 6-week series of Nothing Held Back. So if you have been on an event with me before, put me in the chat. I want to see who is a repeat attendee here. Awesome. Amazing. Look at all those me's. Amazing. So we're going to talk today about supplementation and how we specifically think about it at FDN. Supplementation needs a framework like everything else. So we've got you covered where that's concerned. So we just want to start off, as always, with a little framework of what do we do at FDN and how do we think at FDN? What is our philosophy? And how does every specific piece that we're going to teach you get moored back to that philosophy? And that's really what keeps you on the path as a practitioner, is to have this sort of guiding principle, a system that is repeatable and duplicatable, and a way to think about all the pieces that comes back to foundations that you can always return to. That's how you keep yourself on track as a practitioner. So it's a beautiful system. So can the body heal itself? The answer to this is, of course, yes. We know this because we can recover from viruses and from infections. We know this because when we get cuts or bruises, they heal. We know this because when we break bones, they also are able to knit themselves back together. But this has limitations. And we know this because if there were no limitations, if we had to go and get our gallbladders surgically removed, they would grow back. If we accidentally lost a finger, our bodies would be able to grow that back. If there were no limitations to this, we would never get sick, we would never age. So what are those limitations bound by? What happens with that? And so for us, we think about this as a savings versus spending problem. So the environment has always posed challenges to human beings. Since we first stepped on the scene 200,000 years ago, the environment has always been a challenge for us. So in those days, it was, are we going to be able to survive this really harsh winter? Are we going to be able to find enough food? And in these times, the environment poses different challenges. Those are mainly mental, emotional stressors, environmental toxins, poor lifestyle, all of that. So we do have this reserve of innate intelligence, which we can think of as a bank account. So we are born with a certain amount of money in our innate intelligence bank account. And then we interact with the environment, which costs us money out of our bank account every time we run into one of these external stressors. So this is really a savings versus spending issue. So if we've got more money in the bank at the end of the day than we spent, then we're not going to get sick. And if we have spent more than we have in savings, we are going to get sick. It's just sort of that simple. So that means that for us as FDNs, we have this one job, and that is to identify obstacles to healing and to creatively overcome them. That is what we do. So what are we up against? We do have this chronic health epidemic in the United States. So just a few facts here. There are many others that we could cite. 60% of all adults have a chronic health condition. 30% of all children in the United States have a chronic health condition. And the average 30-year-old at this moment has 9.3 prescriptions. That's insane. So even if we don't have a chronic disease at this moment, we probably do have some symptoms that might be described as preclinical. So we haven't gone all the way over into a diagnosed disease, but we've got some brain fog. We've got weight we can't lose. We've got insomnia. We have anxiety, these types of things. And so we might go to the doctor and he might run some tests and he might say, you're totally normal. At which point we're going to start looking for a different remedy for these particular symptoms that we're looking for. So maybe we're going to try a diet. Maybe we're going to try a supplement. Maybe we're going to try a new modality of therapy. Maybe we're going to try a biohacking gadget. And it's either going to work or it's not going to work, or it's going to do nothing. And that puts us back into the cycle of trial and error, where it's like, okay, now I got to try a new diet or a new supplement or a new therapy or a new biohacking device. And you practitioners may know this with working with your clients, that you may give them a diet recommendation or a supplement recommendation or some type of therapy recommendation, and it doesn't work for them. But it did work for the client before them that had the same symptoms. And it did work for the client before that that had the same symptoms, and it made the next guy worse. So you might yourself be in this cycle of trial and error as a practitioner, trying to find the thing that's going to make the difference for this client. So we have a system for getting clients out of the cycle of trial and error and staying out of the cycle of trial and error as practitioners. So step one in our system is to sort out metabolic chaos with functional lab work. If we can't measure how the bank accounts are in debt, whether we are low in balance on one of them, maybe we're wildly overspending in another. Maybe everybody's out of money throughout all the systems. We've got to have a way to look in the bank account and see what's there and what isn't there. And that's what we use our functional lab work for. So you see here on this slide all of our different screenings that we run. And we are measuring the bank accounts in hormone, immune, digestion, detoxification, energy production, and nervous system. We also have a bonus, oxidative stress, which is not listed in this acronym, but we are looking in the bank accounts to see with the functional lab work, really what is the story? Symptoms are vague, and symptoms can show up for multiple root causes. So we really need some data. We need to be able to measure the bank accounts to really understand where the spending has gotten off track and where we're in debt. So that's step one. Now, I just want to remind you, in case this is your first time, or in case you need a reminder, what is metabolic chaos? If we're going to use the functional lab work to sort it out, what is it actually? And if you become an FDN trainee, you'll talk about metabolic chaos all day, every day. So it's always a good reminder. So metabolic chaos is the idea that symptoms are vague and can be the result of multiple root causes. We really cannot know the cause from the symptom. So if you've got the famous fatigue and brain fog, this can literally come from 10,000 different places in the body, 10,000 different imbalances. There's no way to determine just from fatigue and brain fog what tests you need to run or what recommendations you need to give to that individual. So metabolic chaos recognizes that the sounds like method is never going to yield reliable or predictable results. Sounds like thyroid. Let me run some thyroid tests. Oh, sounds like adrenal fatigue. Let me run a cortisol test. Oh, sounds like SIBO. Let me run a SIBO test. That's never going to produce results the way that measuring in all the foundational systems will, where we can really see what the bank accounts are doing. So measuring the dysfunction in the foundational systems and addressing those deficits is going to outperform symptom chasing and guessing at the root cause. So I want you to think of the root cause as these ripples on this picture of the surface of the water. So if I throw a rock in the water, that's the root cause. So I've thrown the rock, and now that's caused a ripple. And that ripple has gone out and caused more ripples. And those ripples have crashed into each other and caused more ripples. And those ripples have crashed into each other and caused more ripples. But if I'm looking for the root cause, which is the rock, that's no longer exerting an influence. That root cause is no longer there. So I'm going to drive myself crazy trying to look for this root cause instead of just taking a snapshot of the downward spiral that that root cause has produced, which is what the foundational lab work tells us, is that sort of snapshot of the downward spiral that came from the root cause. And in that way, the root cause is not as important as the downward spiral that it has presented. So the way this works in action is I want you to think of all of these circles as the ripples coming out from the root cause. So if we've got all of these ripples coming out and crashing into each other and ripples coming out and crashing into each other, then we might see that we start to get an imbalance in hormones because we are in fight flight. We're dealing with all of these external stressors. We have a lot of cortisol in play. And cortisol sort of takes charge of the body and says, I got this. We need to be dealing with external stressors. This is the most important thing to our survival. And so everybody else in the body steps back and gives cortisol the room that it needs to work, assuming that these stressors are going to be short-lived. They may be big, but that they'll be short-lived. But when they are chronic, consistent, happening all the time, then we get to this place where we're in cortisol dominance all the time. And the sex hormones say, I don't need to reproduce right now, so let's step back and wait for a time when we're safer. And so we start to see sex hormones get low. We start to see the hormones that rebuild us get low. So now our ability to heal and rebuild is suppressed. The immune system follows suit and says, I cost a lot of money. Let me just put myself on 30% so we can save some cash and give all that money to cortisol so it can deal with the external stressors. And I'll just sort of do my job with a light footprint as cheaply as I possibly can. Next is digestion, who says, I also cost a lot of money. So let me back up and be on at 50%. So now we're not digesting food well, and we're getting bloating and gas and other sorts of symptoms that are really unpleasant. Detoxification also says, hey, I cost a lot of money. So let me just slow everything down, and I can stick some toxins in the fat and in the bone and in the tissue and in the brain, because storing it costs less than keeping it moving. So the body is sort of constantly looking for ways to save money so that we can fuel the fight, flight, and all of the external stressors that we have going on. So when we see that for a really long period of time, these original ripples, the hormones, immune, digestion, detoxification, energy production, and nervous system, are going to go out, bang into other things, which are then going to bang into other things, or then going to bang into other things. So that's when we have metabolic chaos. So getting a really good look at the foundational systems through the functional lab work is a very important first step to being able to identify where the bank accounts are low, where they're overspending, where they're underspending, and how we might bring some balance to that. So next, we want to talk about lifestyle, because lifestyle is the root of a lot of these imbalances. What are we eating? Are we sleeping enough? Are we over-exercising? How much stress do we actually have in all of the areas where we think about stress? And then what's going on with our bodies in that way? So I really like this quote from Hippocrates, where he says, before you heal someone, you have to ask him if he's willing to give up the things that made him sick in the first place. So even the ancient Greeks knew that lifestyle choices are the foundation of health, and that's either going to be good or bad. And the impact of lifestyle is what is revealed by the labs. That is what pulls back the curtain for us as practitioners to really look at how much lifestyle has cost. What is the bill that comes due for the way that we're living our lives? And FDN is a complete epigenetics program. So we understand that genetics are about 8% of the picture, but really 92% is how we live our lives, as to whether or not those genes that are there are turned off or turned on. So our work is really to clean up those lifestyle factors, because lifestyle interventions can profoundly change the picture of health. And this brings us to step 2, which is to create a personalized Dress for Health success program based on the data that we got from the labs. So the first in that personalized Dress for Health success program is diet. Not everybody needs the same diet. There is an ancestral diet that is appropriate for all of us. And it's important that we find out what that is that our specific body, with its bio-individuality, really wants as fuel. Then with rest, it is important that we are consistently sleeping enough and that we are sleeping at the right time. And as Reed always points out, it's not called sleep, it's called rest. And that's because it's also important for us to have downtime, for us to not be constantly on the go, overscheduled, and have no time for our bodies to feel safe enough to turn inward and spend money on healing. Then with exercise, we want to make sure that we are matching exercise to the amount of money that's in the bank. Exercise is what we think of as a eustress, meaning a good stressor, meaning that it helps us with our adaptability. It helps us to be able to meet an uncertain external environment. It keeps us on our toes. It keeps us flexible. We need that in order to survive. But when exercise is way outpacing the money that we have in the bank, it becomes another distress. It becomes another factor that's taking money out of the bank account and keeping us from reaching our goals of healing and weight loss and building muscle, because there's just no money in the bank for it. Then we get to stress reduction. And this is where FDNs shine, is we take this category extremely seriously in terms of defining stress in 3 different ways. So the first are our physical stressors. Who sits at a desk all day long and doesn't move around enough? Who looks at screens too much during the day? Yeah, I'm guilty of all this. Who has repetitive motion involved with their job, like a chiropractor or a massage therapist that is putting physical stress? Who's got old injuries from sports, from car accidents, things like that, that are these sort of chronic misalignments that are taking money out of the bank to cover the pain? Next category we have is the mental emotional stressors, which is the ones we're all familiar with. So all of those factors in our life in terms of, are we worried about money? Are we happy in our relationships? Do we like our jobs? Do we feel like we are serving a purpose in the world? All of those types of stressors. And then the third category that we look at are the environmental stressors. So what is costing money out of the bank account in the environment? It is full of chemicals and toxins. There are studies out indicating that before we are even born, we are in contact with an average of 296 separate chemicals. So this is not the environment that our bodies are used to. It is not the environment that they were adapted for. So it is important for us to help our clients really do a careful inventory of what is in their immediate environment. What is in the bedroom? Are there electronics in the bedroom? Is it quiet in there? Is it cool enough? Is there light pollution that's coming through? What are we cooking our food in? What are we storing our food in? What are we putting on our bodies? So all of that we think about within this category. And then, of course, supplementation. So supplementation is an important part, but it's not the whole ball game. And we can sometimes fall into this trap of thinking that supplementation is the most important part of any recommendations that we get, because since the time that we could hear or walk or think about these things, we have been sold this medical model of have an ailment, take a pill. Have a pain, take a pill. Have a cold, take a pill. And that pills really are the answer without any kind of lifestyle intervention. So we can get into this habit of thinking like, really, it's just the supplementation. The supplementation is the most important. Everything else is just in one ear and out the other. But for us as FDNs, it's very important to recognize that supplementation is only 1/5 of the program, and that you need all 5 pillars to really be able to have the most impact on the bank account. It's really all of these pillars that are going to be adding money in and adding vital reserve in and adding resilience in and allowing the body then to be able to have money to spend on healing. So then the third step of the program is to run it. So everyone's going to be different, but mainly they're going to go through 3 phases, and Dustin is going to talk about this a little bit later. But we've got the relief phase, the corrective phase, and the maintenance phase, and I'll put a pin in that so that he can talk about that later. But you're going to want to then coach your client through this process of the protocol. Once we've got the protocol written, you're going to want to walk with them through it, because we're going to find that things shift and change during the course of healing, that we need to do some course correction, which is why we have this picture of a boat, because sometimes we're going to have to avoid a rock, or we're going to have to change course a little bit in order to stay on track for healing. And as Reed always says, there's no powerboating to health. We didn't live ourselves into these conditions overnight, and we're not going to live ourselves out of them overnight. So healing takes time, and it takes the time that it takes. The results of the labs sort of help guide us on that, because then we can see like how in debt are we, and the more in debt we are, the longer it's going to take us to get out of debt. But still, everyone's journey is unique in this way. So that is where supplementation fits into our overall framework. And now I'm going to turn it over to Reed.
Great job, Elizabeth. Thank you very much. 25 years ago, I started taking my first nutrition course. And the beauty of back then is I was able to practice on patients at a clinic. So I was invited to go take this course with the owner of a clinic and come back and work on patients. So who gets that opportunity? It's really rare, I think. And, you know, I had really just been hired to run the place because I was good at building businesses. But that's when I first fell in love with working with people face to face. So completely changed my entire life, being able to work with patients face to face. Mr. Jones and Mrs. Smith, who basically had been in trouble. They've been in that cycle of trial and error, some of them for years. They'd seen 6, 8, or 10 different practitioners and weren't better yet. And not only did I think that was a complete ripoff, but I also wondered, why were they putting their health in someone else's hands in the first place? And so to stick on topic here today, I'll just tell you about this part of it. That nutrition course was, it was really allopathic. In other words, it was sort of take this for that, or eat like this to treat that disease. It was way too allopathic. And what I found was that I learned to recommend supplements a lot to replace drugs that they might be on, or instead of drugs, and here, this is safer and this is more effective, or that kind of a thinking. But people would only take them for a month or 2 at the most, and then they'd stop. And I bet you kind of raise your hand if you've had that problem, that, well, people will, you know, they buy 1 bottle or 2 bottles, but they won't buy 3 or 4 or 5. They won't keep taking them. And the reason is either they feel better and think that they're cured, so to speak, or they didn't work. Either way, they're really not understanding, and I didn't understand initially the reason why we take supplements. And so, can I see the next slide, please? So what I came up with, and I really studied this, okay, people aren't taking them, they're quitting taking them, they don't get it, that we weren't trying to cure anything. So the first thing that one could understand easily is that there's no food around like what my grandfathers grew anymore. Both my grandfathers in Canada, where I grew up, grew food, and we ate it. My brother and I would go and pull stuff out of the ground, or pluck it off the vines or whatever it might have been, wash it off in rainwater and eat it. So we're getting all of our minerals, the vitamins, the essential fatty acids, the amino acids, the antioxidants, the phytonutrients, the trace elements. We're getting all that from our food. Well, that food isn't available today, not in most places, unless you're like Dustin. Now, Dustin will be coming in a minute. I know he grows his own food. I grow my own food. And I order things online that are full of, they're organic and they're full of all the nutrients for the most part. Even so, it's really hard to get all those, again, vitamins, minerals, essential fatty acids, antioxidants, trace elements, and phytonutrients. Where are you going to get all that? So that's the first part. It's substitution for what's missing. By the way, we call this our 4 S's, the 4 S's of supplementation. Like, why? And patients used to ask. Matter of fact, I just ended up putting a little sign up in my office, one of our treatment rooms, where my favorite room for consulting was a little sign that says, "Do I need to take supplements for the rest of my life?" And the answer was no, only for as long as you want to be healthy, which is kind of cheeky. I get that, but Look, in today's world, it's just impossible to obtain all the necessary nutrients from food alone. And supplements can provide the missing link, the substitution for what's missing. And that's why they're a huge part of the Dress for Health Success system, which didn't develop overnight, by the way. Basically, what you had was people coming in the office sometimes 3 times a week. They'd get their chiropractic, acupuncture, massage. We had all these modalities. We had a podiatrist, an osteopath, so they could come in the office. And I started saying, Mrs. Smith or Mr. Jones, it's not coming in the office. You're doing great. You're coming in. I know you say you're feeling better, but it's what you do at home that matters. And that's where this Dress for Health Success program came from. It was the habits that people had to go home and do. My goal, believe it or not, was to make it so they didn't have to come in the office anymore, which was bad for business, but it was good for the people. So anyway, let's go to the next slide, because the first test was substitute for what's missing. Next, what else can you do with these supplements? I found people who had very weak digestive systems, for instance. Their adrenals were on the fritz, if you know what I mean. There's this little thing called stress. And I became an expert in stress, and it's why that's stress reduction is also part of the DRESS system, but more about in another consult maybe or webinar. So supplements for support can be used to nourish and promote healing in organs or systems that are weak or need assistance. Again, one of the most common supplements would be digestive aids, because look, you've got a dysbiosis. You've got something else going on in the digestive system that's preventing you from getting again, I'll name those elements. It's vitamins, minerals, essential fatty acids, antioxidants, trace elements, phytonutrients. If you're not getting all that, you're not going to get well as fast. So we would support your digestion. And again, you've got the other weaknesses and things like the adrenals and what have you. So here's where the lab guidance can really come in handy, because we've identified the healing opportunities. We've identified healing opportunities. That's not the same as diagnosis and treatment. And so you guys probably have used these. Let us know if you're using digestive support at least, or some other support. So I hope you're starting to see that there's actually a system that's repeatable and easy to understand. And let's go to the next slide, where we can talk about the third S, which is stimulation. I don't know about you. Who here travels? Do you travel a lot? Do you remember to take your immune support on your trip with you? Because, by the time you get to the airport, you're not going to get the same selection, and you're not going to get the same quality buying the crap at airports, right? So you want to pack your little travel bag with what's good for traveling. You want your zinc, and you want your echinacea, you want your things like that. So stimulation becomes the third and kind of another pillar of supplementation, why we would supplement. So far we've talked about substitution for what's missing. You just can't find that in food anymore. Support for weak systems. And here we're going to actually stimulate. And it mentions detoxification here. I think that's really critical. And there's lots we could go over, but I want to just move on and say that these choices are also guided by lab values and clinical correlation with the person. What does that mean? Well, it means that the test results, the lab reports that we look at, explain exactly why that person feels so terrible. Now, there's another thing that I started learning 25 years ago, was that people coming in the office had been told, in some cases, nothing's wrong with you. Raise your hand if you've been told, or you know someone has been told, everything looks normal. Yeah. So, well, if everything's normal, why do you feel so lousy, right? So you start going through this cycle of trial and error and around, and you might go into a grocery store or a vitamin shop, and you start reading labels. Thank you for raising your hands. I know it's true. You or someone you know was told everything's normal, or you were given a diagnosis of one thing. Sort of the diagnosis and treatment model is one problem, one part, one fix. And that doesn't work either. It doesn't work for very long anyway. And so this idea of doing test results, getting the lab reports, the kind that we look at, and then correlating with that person. Mrs. Smith, this is what I'm finding. Your hormones are out of balance. Your immune system is underactive. Your digestive system isn't working as well as it should, so you're nutrient deficient, and your detoxification systems are congested from all the crap. And then the person goes, well, no wonder I feel so lousy. That's clinical correlation. When they say no, no wonder I feel so crappy. And oh, by the way, when my let's say regular physician told me my blood work looks normal, that's clinical correlation, and it's a beautiful, wonderful thing. So when you see that, then you know that your recommendations, whether it be for the right diet, the rest and exercise and stress reduction, and your supplements, it all falls in line. So I just wanted to explain that a little bit and go to the next slide. So the normal, everyday, routine lab work and correlation with the person leads us to a customized, self-directed, or something the person's going to have to do. We can't do the work for them, but we can certainly guide them along the way. Diet, rest, exercise, stress reduction, supplementation, which now they know, and that you're going to take because food just isn't good enough anymore. There are certain weak systems that we've identified with the lab work that you're going to want to support. There are also times and places, and plenty of them, where you'd want to stimulate, whether it be the immune system or what have you, detoxification and so on. But last but not least, you have people coming in riddled with parasites, bacteria, funguses, viruses. They've got all kinds of things that, yes, you could go to a physician. By the way, when we find these things on our lab results, we always explain to a person, no, these are the kind of things, Mrs. Smith or Mr. Jones, that your physician might be interested in, maybe, even though they're the one that told you nothing's wrong with you. And we did the harder work, the more deeper investigative work to find some of these, again, these parasites, bacteria, fungus, virus, and so on. You've got the biofilms and all kinds of things that could be treated, but it's up to a person. We always respect one's individual wishes. If someone gets one of our lab reports that identifies something fairly virulent, then we'd even say, look, you probably should go check with your physician. And all kinds of things can happen from there. There's lots of forks in the road that might occur, but we could also feel very confident in telling them, or you may decide you want to self-treat, and it's up to you. And they would say, well, tell me about that. Well, there's things that are time honored that have been going on for thousands of years to get rid of some of these unwanted inhabitants and things that are overgrown. Again, it depends on each person. But remember, we've done our homework. We've done our lab work. We've asked the person, gotten a complete history on a person, just like anywhere else. And then we've run all our labs and decided the things that need to be handled, just improve. These are your healing opportunities. This is what's out of balance and dysfunctional, and sometimes way, way, way upstream. And so generally the substitution was missing, the stimulation and the support that we've provided already is enough. But if they've got something really unwanted, we give them their treat, their choice, and they can either get medical. And by the way, and whoever's up next is going to probably attribute to this, you can do both. There's absolutely nothing wrong with going to your physician, and an astute physician would say, yeah, that's, you show them the lab that we ran with you, that you ran on yourself actually, and they might say, yeah, we definitely, they might retest, they might say, yeah, let's treat that, here's what you can do. And some of the things that we would recommend to go along with that would be very mitigating, help you get through that situation. The one thing I'll say is that with self-treatment, especially of pathogens, It could take longer with the natural products because the pharmaceuticals are much harsher, stronger, and of course that's why they have a lot of side effects. But they can kill a lot of stuff. We just hope they don't kill the patient while they're at it. Back to you.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Reed. So now Dustin is going to take us through the phases of healing.
All right. Well, Elizabeth and Reed, definitely, difficult to follow that up. You guys both did a great job, and thank you for setting it up very well. And I don't know about any of you, but I've certainly been in the cycle of trial and error more than I would like to. And thank goodness for FDN, that we're able to bring everything together for my health, and bring things back to balance. So anyhow, supplementation is definitely one of those things that I've got into pretty heavily, but it has led to a large graveyard of supplements, basically that I'm not utilizing anymore or whatever. And it's just because again, that cycle of trial and error. But when we get done with our lab screenings, as Reed and Elizabeth had mentioned, we're ready to basically implement that program. We have these three phases that we go into, and the first one is relief care. And what we find is that most of the clients are actually on their own relief care of some sort. So they're basically trying over the counter medicine, or they're trying pharmaceuticals. I find that super concerning. With Elizabeth, you have that statistic of like a 30-year-old having 9.3 meds by that age. I mean, it's just crazy to me. My mom's 74 and on no meds, and that's because she's doing the FDN program, right? So anyhow, super amazing way of doing this. But the relief care that we look into is not going to be that over the counter. It's not going to be that pharmaceutical. It's going to be that oftentimes what we call intelligent allopathy, which is this using herbs or using different types of minerals or vitamins or whatever to support. And basically, to give you an idea of what this kind of insists upon, is that we have the vital reserve, which Elizabeth had talked about, kind of our money, our bank account, right? And we really want to boost and support that a lot of times initially in this relief care, because our clients come to us a lot of times that they're just completely out of energy. And so we have different herbs, right, different vitamins that are going to boost this. We can oftentimes definitely get involved in the lifestyle too, right away. But anyhow, you often have heard clients come to you probably constipation, right? You can't get anywhere if that client is eliminating their bowels, right? So we've got to maybe have that relief care where we're gonna help them with their constipation. Or what if the client is disrupted in their sleep patterns that they can't even think about healing, right? We might have that particular herb or that particular mineral, right, that could help them with their sleep. So anyhow, there's a lot of ways to think about relief care. But like we've got at the bottom of the slide, we can often have a client feeling better fast. They're oftentimes heading in the right direction within the first week. Sometimes it does take a couple weeks to get things going. But yeah, we really utilize this relief care to just boost that vital reserve up, get those things that their main complaints oftentimes dealt with right away. So anyhow, this category, we have a lot of natural alternatives, and so anyhow, it's definitely a good one to start with. Now we can go to the next slide there, Elizabeth, and talk about the corrective phase. So this is at the point where when we were doing that relief care, we are working on the corrective phase at the same time, but it often takes a little bit longer duration for our clients to feel the difference. So we're addressing hopefully what is actually causing that individual to have that low energy, causing that individual to have that constipation. But again, the corrective phase is going to take that additional time, and it is really the meat and the potatoes of the program. But we have done these testing, right? We've done the lab screenings. We know what needs to happen because we've looked into their stress and hormone panel. We've looked into their, GI, assessment, screening, and so forth. So anyhow, we know what we're on the process of doing, and this is where we kind of intervene, right? Where we are able to, support with hormones, or we're able to support with like Rita to kind of finish that pathogen eradication, where this is the part of things that need to be corrected. Those like Reed was saying, those things can take a while. And so what if we have an individual, right, that has a particular dysbiosis that is leading down that path of like constipation that I was talking about? It's going to take a while for maybe that dysbiosis to go away in the natural route. So we want that relief care that we talked about earlier, right? So anyhow, this corrective phase is where we're going to come in. We're going to, hopefully deal with that, permeability of the gut. We're going to deal with that, hormonal imbalance. We're going to deal with that, gut pathogen. We're going to deal with that, food sensitivity, whatever it might be that, is basically, putting somebody out of balance, right? So we can go into that last slide there, Elizabeth, on the maintenance phase. So this is the one that basically the client has, done the program with us. They, we got them on that, appropriate relief care. We got them on that appropriate corrective care, and they've ran the program, right? And typically we work with clients for 90 days. We're not going to be, in that cycle of trial and error again. Hey, your liver needs this, so take it for the next week or two and you'll be good to go, and that's all we're going to work with. No, we, dealt with that hopefully for 90 days now on the corrective care. And then, we get into this maintenance phase, and this is really where, we're looking to educate the clients on how to get well, stay well. We want to, figure out what might be going on. And one of the things that we talk a lot about in, FDN is that our clients, a lot of them have these vital voids that we talk about. And their vital voids are going to be like they had their, Elizabeth had mentioned earlier, their gallbladder removed, right? What if they've had, gastric bypass surgery and they can't absorb much for nothing, for nutrients? Or, what if they've had their thyroid, removed, or whatever. I mean, we have to look into these vital voids, and this is going to be part of our maintenance care, right? We're going to really have the client support that for the rest of their life. I don't think I've met one person with a gallbladder removal that is going to be able to digest fats well for the rest of their life without that vital organ, right? So we need to really support those vital voids. So we're going to have these maintenance, and this can be things that are going to be like digestive support if we feel like they need it long term. It's going to be things like vitamins and minerals. Rita talked about that we have a soil system that isn't providing those minerals for us, right, and the vitamins and the essential nutrients and so forth. But also, as you can see here, that in this slide we have travel and extra stress, right, that we want our clients to be equipped for, really, really important. And so anyhow, we do want them to, keep going on the full dress protocol. I don't think that I'm going to be able to maintain my health if I don't do diet, I don't do rest, I don't do exercise, and so forth. So we need to have those 5 pillars of dress. But we can also, talk about supplements, and have that as part of the maintenance care. Now, will you have some clients that need a lot? Sure. Will you have some clients that don't need as much? Absolutely. But we certainly want to, be able to support them. Basically in closing here, I just wanted to give you this little bit of a analogy. When we talk about that our clients really need to, Elizabeth had mentioned this earlier, they need to live that healthy lifestyle, and then supplements are only going to be a supplement. That's why they're called that, right? They're not the everything. They're only one part of that. But the story that I wanted to leave you with is I worked as the nutritionist at a health food store for 4.5 years. And the one thing that, the majority of the clients or customers came in for was relief care, right? They would be like, I have, bloating, I want, something for it. And, that's great. We can help them with that. They're in the right spot, in my opinion, because they are in the health food store. But what if they had been working on the corrective phase at the same time, right? That they're working on the relief. And that's what we're doing as FDN, is that we're really working on all of these. But anyhow, here's an interesting thing, is that as we continue to harp back on, come back to lifestyle, come back on what you need to remove. Elizabeth had that great quote of hypocrisy saying, what are we going to remove, right? That got us sick. Okay. You cannot believe how many times I'm on the, sales floor basically of that health food store. And I have individuals come up to me and they ask me, what can I do for my lungs? And I can smell right there on them that they're smokers, right? So I want to say immediately, like, you need to remove the cigarettes. That's what you need to do for your lungs. But instead, I have to go through the 900 different supplements because that's what they're there for. And we certainly, as a health food store, need to sell them something. But anyhow, coming back to, FDN, that's when we come into, right, the lifestyle part of it, is that we need to remember that we've got to, remove those obstacles that are standing in their way. And so anyhow, 900 supplements aren't going to get anybody better if they continue to smoke, right? I mean, that's kind of the point. So anyhow, but yeah, I really appreciate all of you being here today. And, I, encourage you to, take a look at FDN and certainly, give this, way of supplementation, a go and a thought.
Awesome. Thank you, Dustin.
Thank you, Dustin. I will also thank him. And we will get into this Q&A here. I see a lot of great questions. I'm going to pick from some that some of you guys have been waiting. And definitely, I want to make sure that we get to some that are super important for everyone to understand. So some we will be able to distribute to Elizabeth, Reed, and Dustin and kind of get their different opinions on it. Others might be more direct for one person. So Reed, if we can address this one right away, I'd love to do that because this is important for you. And just so you guys know, we'll be here for another 32 minutes with you if you keep having questions. So we have plenty of time for all this stuff. All right, Reed, so this is what I got for you. This individual said, I was at a lawyer's Q&A in recent weeks where they mentioned that in 13 states, there are strict laws blocking our ability to discuss diet and nutrition. If we pursue FDN status, can we provide sample multiple meal plans for them to choose from, answer their questions about what foods are richest in magnesium, for example, and as well as openly discuss supplements? So this person is wondering about mixing, meal planning versus educational statement about what foods might have magnesium in them versus the supplements. So I figured this was a good opportunity to kind of just give a general overview of what it means to help out with the nutrition side as an FDN, because we're definitely not meal planning in the way that a dietitian would. We can't do that. Oh, you're on mute. You're on mute. There you go.
Well, yeah, okay, thank you. So it's a really good question, and it's something we do come across because people are very concerned about staying in their lane. And our lane is one that where we don't diagnose or treat anything specifically. We deal with healing opportunities instead. And they're not the same. We don't use the same lab work as a lot of physicians. We're not looking to diagnose and treat. Matter of fact, we find that very limiting. And physicians are finding that very limiting as well. There's a lot of physicians who are sick and tired of the handcuffs of being bound by the diagnosis and treatment model. And when I started 25 years ago, people didn't want another diagnosis. They wanted to know what's really wrong with them. And of course, I wasn't able to give a diagnosis, so it worked out really well for each other. And so, as I mentioned, I had to send people home with what they could do at home, which was diet and rest and exercise and reduce stress in every way that it could be identified. And the labs help identify some of the stressors that you probably didn't even know about. Then, of course, supplementation, and do it all without crossing the boundaries that existed. And they do, as the questioner mentioned, vary from state to state. And so let's go into that for just a moment, if you will. There are forces and interests that want monopolies. They want to monopolize a lot of these considerations, like what should I eat? Which is kind of insane if you think about it. Why should anyone have a monopoly on that? So these forces go to the state legislatures, that's your state senators and your assembly people, and they lobby them under the guise of safety. So we want our state to be safe. So we're going to regulate who can give nutritional advice. Now, that's not bad in theory, but it doesn't work out that way in practicality. It's just to limit who can say, including if you really read the law properly, in certain states, you'd have mothers unable to tell their children to eat their chicken soup because, oh, that's the nutritional advice. What you're treating something specifically. So we understand that so much of this is so much nonsense, and that nonsense under the guise of safety regulations has captured some of the states, and that's on one side. So on the other side, I'll say that in 25 years, I've helped a lot of people learn about what foods would be best for them, for their metabolic type. So based on your ancestry and genetics, there are certain diets that are better for you. And I have pointed tens of thousands of people in the right direction. And some of those methodologies where you find out what's the best diet for me. Is it paleo? Is it, you name a diet. And so, yeah, we can point people in the right direction without getting in any trouble. No FDN practitioner has ever been, I don't think anyone's even had a cease and desist letter, which is what you would get. And so no one's going to go to jail over any of this stuff. In some states where first of all, you have to watch what you say a little bit, and how you go about it. But no one has ever been accused of practicing medicine without a license, or even, say, less than that, going up against registered dietitians who might have a monopoly on certain like institutional diets and things like that. Like, I'm sure that if you're in prison, your diet's going to be dictated by some dietitian somewhere. You need this, and it would be the minimum standard, of course, what they would spring for in a prison. You're feeding thousands of inmates. Well, you can't put them on, bread and water. That would be inhumane. So they have people that make diets like that. The same thing with hospitals. Like, my mom's 94. She is on a couple meds, but other than that, she eats, organic, healthy food and lots of good things. And where she lives, the diet is very, I'll say, open. If you like meat and potatoes, you can eat meat and potatoes. And so there's some rules around that. No FDN's ever been accused of or prosecuted in any way, or even had a letter of cease and desist. Never. So the way that we do things is not to treat specifics. We're not going to put someone on a diet specifically for one condition or another. We're going to put them on what we're going to do is teach them how to discover the diet that's best for them, which begins with, I'll just say this, you guys, tell me if I'm going on too much, but really, what is the best diet for you is what you want to know. And dietitians in this country are following a food pyramid that is complete crap. Remember, there are monopolies trying to tell you what to eat. Those monopolies would be the big agriculture and big manufacturing that want you to eat the food that they make. And why do you think the country's so unhealthy? Because of those people. And so we don't abide by the current foods pyramid. We abide by what's best for me as an individual. So I have a certain amount of protein, fat, and carbs that I like to eat that keep me full of energy, keep my mind sharp and clear, that allow me to get to the next meal without having any outrageous cravings and things like that. So I've discovered my own best diet for me. Again, for even just being happy. Being happy requires you to be nourished properly, I think, because you can't be happy if you're not healthy. And so we go about it just a different way. It's not that way of the standard American diet, um, which is, if you pardon the phrase, shit.
Well, thank you, Reed. That's a great answer. And then we did get a follow-up in the chat. I'll just do this just to be very direct here. So the main part of her question is really about the 13 states with restrictions. So the reason that you don't have to worry about the 13 states with restrictions, which are real, you're right that that exists, is because we're not doing anything that would be unaligned with those restrictions to begin with.
Let me give you an example. Ev, I'm going to jump back on that and say, look, generally FDNs are working with individuals and some groups to help to have them run lab work to find out what's really wrong. What are the imbalances and dysfunctions that are usually upstream that no one else is even looking for? And then when you address all of them at one time, every cell, tissue, organ, and system in the body simultaneously with the right epigenetic program, diet, rest, exercise, stress reduction, supplement, it's not to treat one thing in particular, it's to treat every cell, tissue, organ as an individual. So that's not practicing medicine. And as far as the diet part goes, you're going to learn to eat what's right for you. And we're not going to, so the average FDN is doing that. They're helping people sort out what's the right diet for you based on the pure science of it, the genetics, for the most part. So what should I say? You know, the other system that everyone should be eating this or everyone should be eating that doesn't work. And again, it's why we're so sick. So go on from there.
All right. Sorry about that. Okay, cool. Let's buff out this next question here. And this is a really good one. I'll probably, I mean, anyone can answer it. Reed, you're the one who founded the program, but just for the sake of passing it around, Elizabeth, this might be a good one for you. And then Dustin, I got a great one for you as well. This person was just asking about why are blood panels not included as some of the foundational labs, right? It almost seems like, wouldn't that be, if you're coming into this for the first time, almost people assume that that's part of the foundational labs, and that's actually not what we use as our foundationals. And then also, to be clear, we're not discrediting the validity and usefulness of blood labs. But Elizabeth, I'd love if you could touch on why do we not have that in our foundational labs?
Sure. Thank you, Evan. So as Evan did mention in the chat, learning blood work is something that you can do as an FDN. So that's not off the table. But for our foundational labs, we use non-diagnostic lab work. So there is a continuum of feeling amazing at one end and being sick at the other, like having a disease. And a lot of us sort of fall in this middle gray section where we don't feel good, but we don't technically have a disease yet. So we've got all of these sort of vague symptoms, and we take that to a doctor and he runs blood work and he's like, I can't find anything wrong. What the doctor is really saying in this case is it's not catastrophic enough yet for my training to be relevant. Like, I can't do anything until this gets worse. So what we actually have is this system of using non-diagnostic labs where we can look into the gray area and say, what are the bank account balances doing there? Why is it that we're feeling bad? Who doesn't have money that needs money? Who's wildly overspending and creating havoc in the rest of the body? So this non-diagnostic lab work is really effective at looking in this gray area where blood labs are more effective for that diagnostic purpose.
Thanks, Elizabeth. And just to give you guys an anecdote for whatever it's worth, at the age of 18, I share this often on these webinars, I had 7 different diagnosed conditions. Now, what's interesting is all of those diagnoses came from clusters of symptoms that, Western medicine has identified. If these are all together and you have, one or more, you have this condition. What's so funny is when I did the standard blood work, the only thing that they could show me is that I had slightly high cholesterol. So it's like I was able to get these diagnosed conditions, which I actually do believe were real. I'm not dismissing that the diagnosis was accurate, but it's just so funny that it's like, all right, well, what do I do about this then? We go to the blood work, and on paperwork, at least, I look like a healthy enough person. So that's another reason that they're used too, is someone could be actually quite sick, and we're able to find these things that blood work might not always show. Again, it is still useful. We're not dismissing that. Dustin, I want to throw this one to you. Again, this is a question that anyone could answer here, but just for the sake of getting a bunch of different perspectives, I think it's cool. Tim asked very directly, does FDN recommend supplements based on the lab work? And it's like, yes, but there's also more that goes into this, because we always recommend anything based on the person, right? So I'd love to dive into that concept.
Yeah, Evan, you really hit it on the head there. One of the main foundations of FDN is that we're always coming back to what we call clinical correlation. So we definitely are working our hardest to not treat labs. That's not the goal. And so we want to, really have that correlation to come back to what the client, is telling us. And so anyhow, yeah, we use the supplementation with the lab kind of, guiding us, the correlation guiding us, that we're not just going to only treat lab results.
And just as
the important consideration, and this is true for our labs, which, as Elizabeth said, they're considered research use only. So you can't get a diagnosis from them. We don't have to worry about missing a diagnosis. They're really just functional labs that tell you what's out of balance or what's might be there in excess, but we don't treat the paper. So the lab results, whether it's blood or whatever it is, those results aren't the problem. They're the result of the problem. So people understand this when it comes to symptoms. If you have a symptom, that's not the problem. That's the result of the problem. The symptom's the last thing to occur in a disease process. Generally speaking, there's something upstream. And so our labs look for those multiple healing opportunities that are upstream and try to address them all at once. So to Dustin's point, we don't take this for that. A lot of times this language is trying to sort of trap you to say, oh, you're running labs and treating that thing. No, because we're not forming a diagnosis to be treated. We're looking for imbalances. A lot of them are nutritional, and so food's really good, and supplements can be very helpful. If a person wants to self-treat, it's their choice. So a lot of this language is, it looks to me like it's trying to trap you into saying the wrong thing. And, my background prior to the nutrition field was environmental and business law. So I was very conscious of the law. I'm very respectful of the law. I've never broken the law or even crossed the line. People asked me 25 years ago when I started, blah, 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 blah. Take care of yourself better. It's just a self-care program. We just want people to be healthier is all. Eat better, go to bed on time, exercise. Oh yeah, you're practicing medicine without a license with that, right, Reed? Eat better, go to bed on time, get more exercise, reduce stress. Take some supplements, which are all over the counter. There's nothing untoward here at all in any way, shape, or form. And yet you will find those who want monopolies, who are maybe jealous, I don't know, that we're actually healing people or helping them to heal themselves, the correct term. And someone, I noticed somewhere in there, no, we don't use the word, matter of fact, we have disclaimers that you have to put on there. You got to use your disclaimers. This advice is not intended to heal, cure, prevent any disease. That's between you and your doctor. Go talk to them about it. So again, there's a lot of language out there that's frightening. The emancipation from that fear comes from knowledge, comes from studying things. And it comes from just realizing that we're just educators. Our mission is to educate as many people as possible how to get well and stay well naturally. Matter of fact, I don't know if you know this, but there was just an election recently in the United States. And the guy who won, hate him or love him, I don't care. He's got good people, including RFK. Yeah, that's one of our heroes, frankly. He's going to change the world And what we need to get rid of is the corruption around diet and all of these other things that are out there. So I don't mind saying it. I'm on the side of truth and education and not hiding what's in food. California, I can go on and on about this. California, a few years ago, I think it was Prop 65, the people presented a proposition which had it gotten enough votes, it would have gone on would have become law to label food properly. You know who fought it? Advertisers in newspapers and on TV. They fought it tooth and nail. They didn't want to have to label what's on, even just saying whether it's GMO or non-GMO. So these big companies fought that proposition and won. Why? Because they paid off the newspapers and television stations to fight against it and with their propaganda. So that's what we're up against, folks. We're the other side. We're the truth. All we care about is really helping people. Again, my mom's 94 and she still wants to have a relationship. She told my sister, I said, I don't want to hear about it. 90. Why? Because she's got vital reserve. She's still, that's what we want. I'm 71. Trust me, it comes to mind, these sorts of things. Thank God I'm married to a beautiful young woman. But these things are real. We don't do anything wrong. Our intention is 100% to help people live healthier, more vital, longer lives, as naturally as possible. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Reed. Back to the Q&A.
You're kind of turning red there, Detective. Did I say
yeah,
something?
Detective Ev is doing what he can on this webinar. Okay, so Jennifer had asked, so we don't use any blood labs at all, ever. And I know that you did talk about this in the chat. Elizabeth, you did a great job. And Jennifer, you had also asked about the New Jersey thing. So I think that's something worth mentioning. I do recommend what Brenda said, that you come to our Medical Director Program webinar on November 26th. That is a great webinar to learn about this stuff. I'm coming from Bucks County, Pennsylvania. So I lived 5 minutes from the Jersey border. And I had many clients over the years that have been out of Jersey. The reality is, because of our medical director program and the way that we support you at FDN, you don't really have to worry about stuff like that. What you're mostly hearing about, Jennifer, is there is a few states in America, I think it's like 4 or 5 now, I don't want to misspeak, that would not allow direct-to-consumer blood work. So there are websites right now, and people don't realize this even in our space. There are websites right now, you don't need anyone. You can go to their websites, you can order the blood work, and as long as you're willing to pay out of pocket, you could have a test waiting and ready for you tomorrow at like Quest or LabCorp, and you can go crazy. You can do whatever you want. There are a few states that do not allow that. So in those cases, if you were using blood work, then you would need the doctor's prescription. Again, I don't want to confuse you because we're not doing that anyway. So a lot of the stuff that you're hearing for Jersey is just not applicable to us as FDNs. And Elizabeth and Reed especially, I don't want to misspeak there. I mean, as far as I know, with our medical director program, we can still get all the foundationals with Jersey. Is that correct, or am I incorrect?
Yeah, Jersey's wide open. So listen, again, you got to look at the messaging that's underneath. What is the purpose of the message, the legislation, the regulations and things like that? It's to create and maintain monopolies by those people who do not have your best interests at heart. They're completely driven by profit. And look, I'm driven by profit too, but it has to be ethical. So theirs doesn't have to be ethical. It just has to be, and they just try to dominate. I want to say this about blood work. We love blood work. Blood work can tell you a lot of things, but the work that FDNs do are generally considered subclinical. So it's what's really wrong, and sometimes before it gets to be a medical condition. So again, there's lots of insights you can get from blood work, very helpful. And especially now with the functional medicine things people are doing with early markers, early warning signs that you're headed in the wrong direction. So again, we're there to run our labs when you've been told pretty much everything looks normal, and yet you feel like crap. You could be overweight and tired and fatigued and no libido, and you can't build muscle, and your brain isn't working right. You can't remember where your car keys are. You got a lot of things going on, And yet, oh, everything looks normal. Well, that's baloney. And so we lose saliva, urine, blood, and stool, and hair even, and things like that, to look for what are the imbalances and dysfunctions that are way upstream. And so a lot of it just doesn't show up in blood work until you're clinical. And oh, by the way, physicians know this. They know how to track, let's say your glucose levels, for instance, and insulin, things like that. But until it reaches a certain threshold, they'll say you're fine. You know, you're fine. You're heading the wrong direction. You know, they might or might not say, but you're fine until it reaches a certain threshold. Well, that's not a very good way to manage your. It's like saying, well, my tires and still have some air in them. Okay, they're not empty yet. I'm not on the rims yet. We're still right on these flat tires. And that, of course, is kind of an insane system to us.
All right. Dustin, I'm only asking this question to you because I feel like when I've done clinical advisor consults too, you've been so good at pulling out like these random things that I've never heard of supplement wise or company wise. So sorry to put you on the spot with it, but Susan, you have been so patient. Thank you, Susan. She asked a very specific question saying, I know someone who is promoting LifeVantage Protandem NRF2 supplement. Have you heard of it? Has anyone here heard of it? I have not personally. I've never heard of it at all.
Yeah, basically, it's long of the short is, Evan, that is an inflammatory modulator, essentially, promoted to, help us not age as fast, right? We've heard about those type of compounds. The downside about Protandim, and I'm not totally positive, but I think that it might be kind of one of those like multi-level companies type of scenarios. Not that those things don't sometimes produce good supplements, but in general, we do have other ways of helping our clients with that type of scenario, just overall anti-aging, modulating inflammation, those type of things through our dress protocol, and then our supplements we can get through our dispensary that is really vetted, the supplements to a much higher quality and so forth.
Thank you. I figured you'd be the guy. Like, of course, you at least have some idea of what it is. And Susan said, thank you. So I'm glad we finally got to it, Susan. As someone who did the MLM thing at 18, 19, it's great and all, that's fine. Generally speaking, I would almost bet my savings every time. If I saw someone promoting a standalone product, I do think you're correct, Dustin, that usually it's attached to that. We're not against it, but that's not something that we do at FDN. I wanted to read Rihanna's awesome thing here. I know it's a Q&A, but if I can just get through this, because this will make Dustin, Elizabeth, and Reed smile. Rihanna had said, I was raised by a mother that taught me proper diet. We used an herbalist instead of a doctor and grew our own veggies and livestock. This is a nice comment, not a question, so you don't have to retain all of it. I teach NIA fitness and physical therapy and preach moderation and exercise, make almost all of my own personal and household products, and place rest and self-care above all else. Despite doing my best with dress, I was having difficulty recovering from significant mental, physical, and emotional stressors. With the foundational FDN labs, I was able to precisely pinpoint exactly what supplements I needed to push my health over the edge to actually find healing. I have not felt this good in decades, and I'm so grateful for FDN. I can't imagine where I would have been without the first part of dress. And I am a great example of how working the whole dress protocol is so important. Did you guys work with her directly? It's Rihanna Dar. Awesome. All right, sweet.
Right.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I know that's not
Wonderful.
a question, but we appreciate that.
Yeah, wonderful testimonial, and it's very common. But thank you for speaking up. We've trained thousands of practitioners. I've personally interviewed well over 2,000 of them post-graduation. So every single graduate of the FDN program gets to have their say. To me and to the rest of the staff, I don't do all of the post-grad interviews, but I've done a couple thousand of them. And I would say 99% of the people said, when I asked, what do you like about the course? Now I give them an opportunity to tell me what could be better, which is why it's so good. I listen to the people who took it. So the more important question to me is, what could I do to make it better? Or what would you like to have seen that was not included? That's why it's this huge, robust, wonderful course. It's the people who took it. But man, to a person, they say, well, first of all, Rita, I want to thank you because I ran the labs on myself, which is part of the tuition. It's included in the whole course thing. That's like part of the main point, you know. And if that's all you did, it would be worth the price of admission. So just about I mean, you heard Elizabeth and Dustin and Evan all say that this is what got them over their hurdle or hurdles. Doesn't mean we're perfect. Doesn't mean we're not still working on it. But of course you're going to do that. So thank you for the testimonial. And that's common. It's just that's kind of how it works. Everybody can stand to make some improvements. So look, you can get from unwell to well. That's amazing. You do the labs, you do DRESS, and you live like that. You're gonna create some really good habits and things like that. You can get from unwell to well. That's why we're in business, kind of. People are out there struggling, cycle trial and error, been to 6, 8, 10 practitioners. We want to be the last person you need to see to get you from unwell to well. We're not talking about curing cancer or anything like that. We're talking about just unwell to well. But there's also that group of people who are already well and they just want to get to super performance. They're athletes and they're people who, like executives, who've got to be, you know, sharp in the brain all the time. Not like me. I can be lazy sometimes. By the way, do you still want me to come to these things, Evan, or have I like totally destroyed your whole
I don't know if we'd call it a
presentation?
round table, but I think the people are loving it. You're getting some great comments.
All right, so look, I wanted to go back to the supplements. There's 3 things that can happen if you take a supplement. Protandim is an okay antioxidant. No problem with protandim. It's all natural. I don't think there's anything bad in it for you. 3 things. You will feel better. You will feel nothing, or you will feel worse. It's not the supplement, it's the person taking it that makes the difference. There are people that say, oh, Tylenol is the best headache medicine. Other people go, oh, Tylenol sucks. I don't like Tylenol. I'm an Excedrin person. What's the difference? The difference is the person. So FDN has the utmost and ultimate respect for each person as an individual. So, and I'm talking about metabolically down to the very, very small things that are hard to measure, actually. And so I'll just say that about supplements. If someone says, what do you think of this supplement or that supplement? You know, it doesn't really matter what I think.
All right. Actually, let's get this one more in, and then this will be our final question here. Remember, all replays can be found on our YouTube. Brenda just dropped the link in the chat for you guys again. If you do subscribe there, not only do you get the notifications when we release this stuff, but we also do 3 podcasts a week, which actually, if you would like to attend another event just to learn more about FDN and see what it's like to be a practitioner, we obviously know it's November and many of you are considering becoming FDNs this month. Make sure you are subscribed for our YouTube, because tomorrow at, I believe it's 3:30, I'll double check, EST, Reed and I will be doing what's called our lab and learn. So he will actually be doing a live lab analysis for you guys. And yes, that is 3:30 Eastern time. So we do those once every 2 weeks with different clinical advisors and people in the FDN course. So this was our last question that we'll get to for Otto. Regarding MC scorecards, some FDNs use it while others no longer use it. What is the reason for this split, Mr. Reed? Oh, he doesn't go by Mr. Reed. He always says that's his father, or Mr. Davis, rather. Why is it falling out of favor with some? So I think this is actually a bigger question. That's why I wanted to ask it, because you do see some FDNs being textbook FDNs for years later, and then some mix and match things. And we actually support both of those things. So I'd love to be able to discuss, any of you guys, Elizabeth, whoever, why, you know, you might find some FDNs doing it their own way.
First of all, I haven't heard that. I don't like the sound of it. I think maybe they have something to replace it, but it would be kind of irresponsible to not continually monitor the progress of your clients with not, because they won't all spend the money on retesting. And I understand that. And, you know, I run a lot of labs on myself. A lot of them, like I just went over some labs with Dustin. Dustin's my go-to guy within the staff for certain labs. And I want to see how am I doing compared to last year? But the easy, quick, simple, free way is to fill out the Metabolic Chaos scorecard again and see what points you're. I think it's irresponsible to not use it. And I don't approve of that one bit. And I had never heard it before. You just said it, Detective F.
All right. Well, that is Detective Ev's last question for the day. Guys, we have a bunch of other events that are coming for this month. And I think, Brenda, Is there a link directly for them to get all the events that they can go to? And sorry, I know that you're not on audio, so no worries there. Perfect. Oh my gosh, you're so fast. It's actually insane. So you guys have the events right there in the link, and you can just click the add event, and that'll put it in your Google Calendars automatically. And then, of course, you can just see when the different things are scheduled. We have a bunch of stuff that we're still doing throughout the month of November. Again, we have Lab and Learns tomorrow, which are generally standard, but they're still fun to learn about, especially in the month of November when you might be considering the FDN course. Definitely for a lot of the questions that came up today, I think most of you would really benefit from our medical director program webinar that's going to be on November 26th. So click the add event link below so that you can make sure that you're on that webinar. That's where we talk about the how of all this, right? I think, and I know this was true for me, one of the most amazing parts when you get involved with FDN is you're like, wait, we can utilize labs and that's okay to do. And yes, because we're not diagnosing things, we're not treating things. As Reed said multiple times, it's not just a play on words. We don't want to do that stuff. Most of the people that come to an FDN practitioner, they already have diagnoses. They've already been treated. It didn't work. That's why they're choosing to come to us, or at least it didn't work in the way that they wanted it to work, right? That was definitely true for me. So you guys will learn a ton in that webinar, and I'm sorry if we couldn't get to all the questions today. But yeah, I think we did cover a lot. We got the link for Lab and Learn. Elizabeth, closing statement, anything cool?
Yeah, I want to say, first of all, come to my Thursday webinar. We're going to be talking about, does all disease really begin in the gut? It's going to be fun. And also, I just want to say that I feel all of you out there, like I'm feeling it come through, that all of you out there are people that really want to help others. And we really have utmost respect for that at FDN. Yes, we want to make a good living. Yes, we want to be able to support ourselves and have the things that we need to feel comfortable. And we really want to make a difference in the world. We really want to change the world that we were given and make it better for those who come after. What we decide is good health is the legacy that we're going to leave to our children and to their children and their children. And when that baseline keeps falling, that's what's going to happen. And so our mission is really to raise that baseline of the legacy that we're going to leave for the human race behind us. And I just want to commend all of you for the work that you are doing and for the true heart that you bring to the work of wanting to make the world a better place and wanting to make the lives of your clients better, wanting to make an impact on the world. We're all there with you, and we really support that here at FDN.
Gentlemen, you want to even try to compete with that one, or are we just going to leave the mic dropped for her?
No chance.
You know, Elizabeth is our FDN Education Director. I've been working with her for years on making the course better and better and better. But now we've expanded out. We have all these other types of courses and educational programs. You need the foundational course first. So that's what we want you to go sign up for that. You know, you could skip all the things they're talking about. Just go register, sign up, jump into it. You know, get the process started of becoming an FDNP. You'll work on yourself. That's worth the price of admission. That alone. You'll also be trained how to be an independent FDN health entrepreneur, you know, an independent practitioner. It's a fee-for-service business. You can work your own hours. You can work from anywhere in the world that has the internet and where we can ship test kits to. So you got the geographical freedom, you got time freedom, pick your own hours. You got financial freedom because you can set your own wages. Only you can decide what you're going to charge for and most FDNs are making a really good living working what I would consider part-time compared to the way I used to have to work. So it's really an amazing thing. Also, the emotional freedom that you get from knowing you can actually help someone. We'll teach you how to take on clients so that you're going to feel really good. If you attend some of the other things that we do, listen to some of my old webinars, and you can see the chills running up and down my spine as I tell you the stories of this person I helped and that person I helped, who was completely at their wits' end. And honestly, some of it was by accident. You know, we're stumbling onto some of these discoveries that we've made over 25 years. So you can work on yourself. You can become this really successful health entrepreneur, or you can work for someone else. It's totally fine. Matter of fact, we have a job placement board. We have doctors that come to us saying, "Hey, I want to hire a couple FDNs and things like that." We're not a vocational school. We can't say that. But I know physicians that will only hire FDNs. That all their, they don't want sort of a regular health coach. They want someone that knows a thing or two about anatomy and physiology and biochemistry and the stuff that we teach you. And so nurses are perfect for this too. If you've already got a little background, if you got any kind of college and maybe a certificate or two in, you name it, nutrition, fitness, massage, Reiki, God knows what, you're perfect. This is going to fill in all the blanks and give you a new platform to take yourself to a much higher level in terms of personal satisfaction and financial rewards that come with it. Because you're never going to run out of sick people, ever. You mentioned New Jersey. Never mind, I could go on and on. But I had a guy there call me once and say, "Well, do you think I could be successful as an FDN? Where do you live?" "New Jersey." I said, "Nah, there's no sick people there." All right, I'm done, Evan. So,
Well, thank you guys so much for attending the webinar. I know we already got a lot of thank yous in the chat, but definitely for Reed, Elizabeth, Dustin, if you like this stuff, drop a thank you. It lets us know that you want more of it. And they love it. They clearly love it because the thank yous keep coming in. You guys rock. And I hope you all have a great day. I will see some of you tomorrow on the Lab and Learn, and then we will see you throughout the rest of the month of November for our various events. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your afternoon.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.